All right, parents. So I want to make sure that you were clear on what was expected on this assignment. I sent it home last Monday to be returned yesterday. And we had a lot of students who did not return their information. So I want to make sure that you are clear on the expectations. I told them that they had to read directions. We have to read the directions. The directions tell us exactly what's expected of us. And I told them that reading and math now is directly correlated. If you can't read, then you're going to struggle with your math. And I want us all to understand when I say can't read. Um, Reading takes comprehension. So a lot of our babies, they're word calling, but they don't comprehend what they're reading. So reading takes more than just word calling. It takes us understanding what we're reading in order to process it and give the information back. Okay. So for this one, um, they had to create a pictograph using this chart and then use this chart to answer the questions. Include number sentences along with your answer. So I did this with them in class. As you can see, we already had started, and I drew an arrow to tell them that this is what goes on the back. I just wanted them side by side to be able to see what a pictograph looks like. But the pictograph was supposed to be completed here. Okay? All right, so at the bottom, they were also supposed to answer these questions. Many of them didn't even answer these questions. So this is what's causing me pause when we're talking about reading. They are not reading. It's a simple questions. So it's like they do anything that has numbers for math, but if it has reading, they skip it. And I don't know where they got that from, but we really have to work with them to break the habit of skipping the words, because a lot of times with math, this is where they get their understanding from. Okay. Then they were supposed to create sentences or questions rather for the data. Most of them didn't do that. And then some of them, the questions weren't capitalized. I need them to transfer the skills from reading to math. Sentences must be capitalized and they must have a question mark at the end. Okay, so please make sure that they've done that correctly. Okay, next page. They give us a pictograph and they give us a bar graph. When I went over this, I showed them how the pictograph and the bar graph displays the same information. So they have to understand that this can be transferred to this. Another thing that a lot of them had questions even when they were creating their own chart, understanding that their bar graph did not have to go by ones. They could count by hundreds. This one counts by 200s because you got to go all the way up to 950. There's no way you can do a bar graph one by one. You wouldn't want to do it by twos, fours, tens, 20s, 50s, but 200s is probably the best thing. Okay? Afterwards, it says review the sample questions and create 3 questions that apply to the data displayed on the pictogram. So they gave them some samples so they could understand what questioning looks like. They were supposed to create questions for this information. Not the exact same questions, but questions that cause their classmates to use this information to add, subtract, to compare numbers using greater than, less than, or equal to, or even rounding numbers. So we did all of this in class. Please understand, we did a data set in class. We did a bar graph. We did a pictograph, and we did questions. So we did all of this. There's really no reason they shouldn't understand what's going on because we did it in class together. Okay? All right, the next page. It gives them a data set for NBA all-time top scorers. You can see the information here, of course, and you can look at your child's information as well. This, make sure that you are reading with them to make sure they're understanding what this information is about. Then understand that they're going to analyze this data, and create 4 questions from this data. Okay? Using this data, It asks you on this page, you're going to formulate your 4 questions. You see, we did one together already in class last week. All they had to do was create 3 more. Once they finish that, they should answer the following questions. Parents, I need you to make certain that your scholar, when they answer questions, they show their work. So this says, how many more points does LeBron James need to score to overtake Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the top scorer? I shouldn't get a 1 number answer here. This needs to be a number sentence or the problem. Those are interchangeable. Number sentence or number problem is the same thing. Please read the questions. Have them read those questions and answer those sentences by showing their work. And I really prefer, and we'll get further into that as we get in the year, they should answer in a complete sentence. LeBron James needs 2,500 more points to overtake Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the top scorer. They need to restate it in the form of an answer. We really need them to do that because I'm starting to see that they are really not reading and understanding what they're doing. They're just doing numbers. Okay? Next page. This is where we started to fall apart. This is about a dream team. This means that they will choose a team. The Falcons. I chose the Alabama State University Hornets. The Dallas Cowgirls. The Dallas Cowboys. The the Steelers, those teams. Okay, so they have to choose a team. And it doesn't have to be football. It can be any team. One of our little babies, and I thought it was so cute, she chose the Dancing Dolls, which is absolutely fine. They can do tennis. They can do volleyball. They can do swimming, cheer. Choose a team. Okay? Look up some specific data. So if we're doing baseball, you can look up the Braves maybe. And what is the information we want to gather? We want to gather how many home runs were hit in 2015. How many home runs were hit in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, and keep going. But whatever you're collecting data on, it has to be the same data. So either we're going to do home runs or we're going to do how many touchdowns were done that year. But we're going to make sure that the same data is being collected for that team for each year. Okay? Or whatever time period you choose. Once that's done, you collect the data. You have to come over here. Put a title here. Falcons touchdown data set. And then with this data, they have to create a pictograph for the data. Remember, they have to do a key for the pictograph. What are we going to use to identify the number of games won in that year? So one football might equal 10. One football could equal 100. But it's according to your data. What do you need for your data? They could even round it to the nearest 100 or the nearest 10 so that their data set makes sense. Okay? You have to look at the data and figure out what's going to be best for your data. Make sure that you document that in the pictograph title. Falcons football games won in 2000 between years 2015 and 2023, rounded to the nearest 100 or something. You got to put that there so Mrs. Terrell understands and knows. Okay? Whatever this is from here, what you chose. Okay? You got your pictograph, your data set, and then you're going to do the bar graph. The bar graph is exactly the same thing from your pictograph. Same information, just displayed differently. Okay? Once you do all 3 of your graphs, you have to come back to this. It says write 6 questions that are aligned to interpret the data. Same thing again, asking questions about the data. Okay, they're just really doing the same thing over and over again in different ways, and this is like real world application. Okay, all right, this and this should all be the same data. I shouldn't hear anything. This is about basketball, this is about football, and this is about soccer. No, they all should be about the same exact data. Then your questions. Next page. This is where your little project was. It's the same thing that they've done throughout this entire packet. Same thing. Nothing changed. Only thing that changed is now they're creating their own dream team. They can name the dream team anything they want, or they can use an existing team. Okay, so they might want to use the San Francisco 49ers as their team, and then they will pick football players from any team that they like who has the qualifications that they're looking for. They might be looking for the football players who've scored the most touchdowns, or the football players who've thrown the most passes for touchdowns. So it has to be a data with the same information. So who are the top 10 players that's thrown the most touchdowns, thrown the most passes for touchdowns? You list those people, you look them up, and then you create excuse me, you create a data set which you would use tally marks to show. I'm not a football person, so I really can't even call no names in football and tell you they threw however many passes for a touchdown. This other football player, he threw this many passes for a touchdown. And they make the data set. Okay? Once they make the data set, they are supposed to create a pictograph and a bar graph to go with that data. Because this is their dream team. It's not a team that's already created. Once they do that, they have to write 4 questions so that their classmates can interpret the data, or they can look at their pictograph and their bar graph and be able to answer the questions. Remember, questions just can't be how many touchdowns did Brett Favre throw in 2015. That's not a good question. You want a question that makes them really have to dig in terms of adding, subtracting, comparing, those types of things. So you might choose Brett Favre and I don't even know another football player at the moment. How many did they throw all together? Who threw the most football? Who threw the most passes for touchdown? Compare using these symbols. Okay, that's the kind of things that we're looking for with this information. It was the same thing over and over. Data set, pictograph, bar graph. Every single page was the same thing. And I went over this information with them. So I also want to remind you that I want them to become advocates for themselves and their learning. So I expect them to come. If they don't understand, bring their homework back and say, Ms. Terrell, I have a question about this week's homework. On page number 9, I don't understand what this question means. What do I do here? That way I can help them. Don't wait for me to answer your emails or messages, because sometimes it takes a minute and sometimes I get lost because there's so many emails that's coming in. I will get lost. Sometimes I open it, I read it, and a kid does something or needs something or I get hurt. It's so many things that go on in the classroom during the day, and then by the time I come back, I've forgotten what happened. Sometimes my computer has died, so when I turn it back on, everything is cleared back out, and so I forget. So I need you to help them to advocate for their own learning. Okay, advocate for their own learning. You're going to hear me saying that a lot. I think I'm going to add that to their dojo as well. Advocate for their own learning. It helps them to speak up for themselves, and it helps them to take an active part in their learning. Okay, hopefully this helped you today. You all have a great afternoon. Bye.